Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Simplifying Ransomware Protection and Recovery for Hybrid Cloud Environments. This event is brought to you in partnership with our friends at HYCU and Nutanix. We've got a great event here, a great discussion lined up for you. There's going to be lots of best practices and all sorts of expert tips. We'll be taking your questions live, so keep those questions coming throughout the event. As always, here at Actual Tech Media, we want these events to be educational, and we encourage your questions. They're in the questions tab. We even have a best question prize. I'll be talking about that more here in just a moment. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'm glad to be serving as the moderator for today's event. I do want to call your attention there to the handouts tab. It's there that you'll find the new State of Ransomware report, as well as a number of other resources you'll want to check out. At the end of the webinar, it's going to be my pleasure to announce the winner of our Visa $300 gift card door prize. If you're watching this on demand, of course, that drawing has already occurred. The prize terms can be found there in the handouts tab. And then, as I mentioned, we also have our Visa $50 best question prize. This is for the person who asked the best question on the event today live. And of course, you must ask a question to be entered into the prize drawing and meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. We'll be going through all the questions asked during the event, post-event, and selecting the prize winner then. All right, and so with that, it's now my pleasure to introduce you to today's expert presenters. Welcome to Sheva Raha, who is a technical solutions architect at HYCU, and also Mr. Mark Niemeyer, Senior Director of Product Management at Nutanix. Sheva and Mark, it's great to have you on. I'll hand it off to you. Take it away.
Hey everybody, this is Mark Niemeyer from Nutanix. I'm Senior Director of Product Management here at Nutanix. I focus in my daily life on everything around business continuity and disaster recovery. This includes both the Nutanix native capabilities around snapshotting, replication, really protecting workloads running on the Nutanix platform, but also including our partnership with our partner today, HYCU. So I'm very excited to be here. Shiva, you want to introduce yourself as well?
Absolutely, Mark. Hello all. My name is Shiva Raja. I'm the Technical Solutions Architect at HYCU. I've been with the company for, I would say, more than 4 years now. And it's been an amazing journey because we have been developing a lot of good stuff, especially that is so relevant with data protection, especially against ransomware. And I'm more than happy to talk about all the relevant capabilities that we are going to be presenting today. We were introduced, we are relatively a young company. We were introduced back in 2017. We started with building a purpose-built data protection solution for Nutanix, but now we've expanded our wings in supporting platforms like Nutanix, and we've also, expanded our wings in supporting VMware, and we have also gotten ourselves into public cloud infrastructures like Google Cloud, Azure, and AWS. And we have a growing global presence where we have sold our solution to more than 3,100 plus companies across 3,100 plus customers across 75 countries over the globe. So really looking forward to the session. So with regards to the agenda, I just wanted to quickly point out the pointers that we will be discussing about today's session. The first thing that I wanted to do is a quick overview about what our solution does. Especially when it comes to ransomware protection integrated with Nutanix platform. And once I'm done with the introduction, Mark will basically talk about the growing prevalence of ransomware attacks. He has not just anecdotes, but also real, statistics, real numbers about the increasing prevalence of ransomware attacks and how we can go about preventing, or at least even if an organization is impacted by a ransomware attack, how do we go about, recovering from that attack as smoothly as possible. And once Mark is done with that, I will be going through a quick overview about our service that basically helps customers or even prospects to evaluate how well prepared they are in case of a ransomware attack. So when a ransomware event happens in an organization, how well is that organization prepared to recover with themselves from such an attack, right? And once we're done with that, me and Mark will be presenting about enforcing these built-in best practices when it comes to backup and recovery with HYCU and Nutanix platform. So with that being said, let me just give you a quick overview of introduction about HYCU Protege. So as I pointed out before, we introduced our solution back in 2017. The first platform that actually we supported was Nutanix. We reached out to Nutanix senior management and we wanted to support an emerging platform, and Nutanix was the best choice for us. And Nutanix is close to our heart even to this day, because we are one of the solutions where our support for Nutanix's capabilities is like top notch. We are the only solution in the market that has the ability to support all aspects of your Nutanix platform, be it volume groups or AHV or Nutanix files. And our roadmap is extremely aggressive. As a matter of fact, we are one of the few vendors that has the ability to support the latest and greatest firmwares released by Nutanix in an instant, and we also have a very high release rate when it comes to supporting the new features that are released by Nutanix platform. In addition to that, we also are a solution truly purpose-built for a multi-cloud environment, be it with regards to your public cloud infrastructure, such as Google, AWS, or Azure, or be it with regards to supporting your enterprise cloud, such as VMware, or even physical servers, such as Windows or Linux platforms. And this basically gives us the ability to perform an instant and an intuitive lift and shift of your on-prem workloads to public cloud, or public cloud workloads back to on-prem. And that is the true value add of HYCU, because we are able to deliver such complex operations of moving your workloads in an application consistent manner in the most intuitive way. And last but not the least, obviously this session is focused on ransomware protection. HYCU is basically known to deliver ransomware-proof backups, where we have saved, several customers who have been hit by ransomware attacks by making use of HYCU and Nutanix platforms. And I'll be giving those examples as I go through the session. But these are one of the top hallmarks of HYCU Protege as a solution. So, Mark, I'd like to pass the ball to you about securing data centers and the prevalence of ransomware attacks.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and thanks for the intro of Protege. I think that was very helpful, just to set the context, right? So, if you think as a customer, right, you probably wake up pretty much every morning is like, how do I make sure that my company can thrive? How I can make money in the end, right? And part of that is how do I protect the applications, the workload, the services that I'm running in my data centers? And over time, that has gotten more and more complex, right? If you look at your company, your environment, with things like cloud coming in and people storing data left, right, and center, even outside of the typically managed locations and so on, the attack vectors for bad guys actually coming in and doing bad things with your data, with your workloads, with your applications is becoming higher and higher. Ransomware has really, I would say, come up really, really quickly. I would say almost exploded over the last few years, right? We hear about it every day. Actually, I was watching the news this morning, and they had a news story on the county schools in LA being down now for multiple days because of ransomware. So ransomware is really the fastest growing type of cybercrime, but we really have to take it seriously, because once they're in, it can cost you a lot of money. So let's give you a little bit of data around it, and then we're going to cover how you can actually build up protection against these threats as well. Right. So let's look at why you should secure your data centers, and securing your backups is of course part of that. If we look a little bit in the past, the average cost of ransomware was about $1.4 million per ransomware attack. Right. So can you imagine hitting that your customers? The hackers have gotten a lot more sophisticated as well, where in a few years ago, it took multiple days or multiple weeks to get into your environment by the use of well-tested scripts and ransomware as a service that we'll cover later on. The actual time to get into your environment and basically put very destructive measures in your environment has gone down from multiple weeks to about 3 days right now. And we see that going down more and more. Ransomware attributes to about 25% of all security-related incidents in the data center. And like I said, fastly growing. 86% of private sector here in the US that have gotten hit by ransomware actually have made payments to the bad guys, right? So even though you think you might have good protection and have some backups in place and so on, a lot of people have not been able to recover and had to work with the bad guys to pay them and get the keys back. And then last but not least, cybersecurity, if you can afford it, definitely helpful. That definitely helps with paying for the damages and so on, but that also is getting more and more expensive. Overall, in general, the analysts are expecting ransomware to attribute to about $10 trillion worldwide. So fast growing. It's a really serious threat that you have to look at and make sure that your company is protected at multiple levels. Some examples on the screen: Colonial Pipeline, JBS Foods, NHS. Like I said this morning, the LA County Schools. I think other companies got that. It's very visible, but then think about it: how many companies are actually not talking about it, right? If we know that hundreds of companies publicly have admitted that they have gotten ransomware, think about the number of companies out there that do not talk about. And so it has become a real pain in the neck for CIOs, CISOs, right? Those folks, those departments within your organization that have to worry about these threats, right? And they have these security priorities. Of course, ransomware is top of the list, right? But we've also gone through very significant changes over the last 2.5, 3 years, right? With COVID coming in, our access patterns have changed very, very rapidly. People working from home, logging in through VPN, working on unsecured endpoints, maybe working on their personal laptops or their phones, right? But also the explosion of cloud-based services, SaaS services. So in some cases, you don't even know where your data is. So how can you protect that data out there, right? And then the world on the outside is not sitting still either, right? It's constantly changing. It's rapidly changing. With geopolitical vectors in that, with, like I said, things like ransomware as a service, where you just basically pay somebody and they'll help you get into the company that want to attack you and so on. And then that visibility, I don't think that we're doing a good job of giving you that full visibility across all of those attack vectors, across all of those sources of information, data services, applications, workloads, to make sure that you know that you are protected. Our friends at HYCU. One more slide before I turn it back over. And this is a very important slide, right? Unfortunately, because of all of the complexity, there's actually not one technology, not one tool, not one process that you can follow that builds 100% foolproof detection against ransomware. It constantly changes. You constantly have to adapt. You constantly have to build new layers between your services, between your infrastructures, between your backups, and so on, to make sure that your organization is sufficiently protected. 100% protection, in my book, it does not exist. And one of the weakest factors is actually the human. We click on emails that come in. I actually got, so within Nutanix, we actually do tests. We test our employee base, and we actually keep track of things. And you know that pop up when you get a new email that said, "Oh, your manager mentioned something in a mission critical strategy document." So of course I click on that because we always care about strategy. And boom, website pops up. Yep, you now need to take 45 minutes of extra security training. So we take a very proactive approach of training personnel, but it does prove that even though we think we are well trained, it only takes a slip of a finger. It takes one click to really open up the door for the bad guys.
I mean, to your point, Mark, it almost happened to me. I just received an anonymous, suspicious text message, and I almost opened it, and I was about to click on the attachment because I was on another call, and it just took me like a second not to do it. So I can relate to that, man.
Yeah. Excellent. You want to take over and talk a little bit about the R score that you have recently introduced?
Absolutely. So, to Mark's point, right? I mean, even before we wanted to get into this whole details about, what are the best practices for an organization to enforce that, they're prepared for ransomware attacks. We actually thought that what if we built a solid framework that actually would help customers and prospects to evaluate their organization and understand how well they're prepared if a ransomware attack happens. Because Mark brought this excellent point. No matter how strong your infrastructure is, at the end of the day, the weak link is us, right? I mean, it could be because we are not savvy enough, or it could be because we were distracted and we click on the wrong link, and that's it. A mistake made is a mistake made, right? So that's exactly why HYCU has launched something known as R-Score, which actually helps customers to evaluate how well are their organization's security best practices are enforced to ensure if such an attack happens, how well are they prepared to recover from such an attack. Now, the way we have actually delivered this entire service is basically using 5 major pillars. The first one is when you go through the R-Score website, you would basically be going through a review of your entire backup process that helps you to validate and ensure that all of your data sets are being protected with the right set of SLAs or with the right set of RPOs and RTOs and retention settings, right? This basically ensures that any and all data that is critical for your business and also based on your budget is basically protected, that complies to your SLAs. And once we ensure that your backup process is in place, the second thing that we basically validate or verify is your entire backup infrastructure. We try to ensure that your backup infrastructure in itself doesn't have any weak links. I mean, does it have all of the attributes that relate to, let's say, multi-factor authentication, or all of the security attributes that relate to, let's say, multi-factor authentication or multi-tenancy, role-based access control, network segmentation, encryption, preventing manual backup deletion. All those security measures are those measures in place to ensure that your infrastructure as a whole is protected, right? And once that is established, then we basically need to get into the details of network and security policies enforced around networking. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, backup is nothing but transferring data from your source to a specific destination, which means the data is traveling through the network, right? So how secure is that network? How secure is that backup path? And I mean, do we have the ability to encrypt that backup traffic? And also, do we have the ability to perform backups of your production data to a totally vaulted, like a siloed location, so that if your production environment gets impacted, your backups are still siloed to, protected in a vaulted, siloed location, right? The other thing that the fourth item that we basically go through is the entire process involved with recovery, right? We basically go through a set of questions that helps organizations to answer questions with regards to data recovery, be it with regards to servers or applications or important files and folders when a ransomware event happens, right? This also deals with validation capabilities, like ensuring that are you able to test your backups on a periodic basis to ensure that the validation, the validation of your backups are, serve the fact that they're ready to be recovered when such an event happens, right? And the last point is about disaster recovery. It's very similar to the fourth point, the restore process, except when it comes to disaster recovery, the whole premise is based on what if your entire organization is impacted by a ransomware attack? Do you have the ability to recover your entire organization's critical data to an alternate site, right? And this is very important, because when a ransomware attack happens, I mean, if it's treated as a crime site, then then that specific environment is basically going to be quarantined, and that environment is not going to be available for production for more than 2 weeks or a month. And organizations cannot afford to stay offline for a month. That's not practical at all. So you need to have a solid disaster recovery, or otherwise I would call that as ransomware recovery, to alternate sites to ensure that your business is still up and running with most of your critical workloads. So that's exactly what disaster recovery deals with. Now, when it comes to delivering results, right, especially constructing the R-score metrics, we fully mimic the FICO score, right? I mean, especially when it comes, it's almost like your credit score. So if you go with any of the credit monitoring services, and when you subscribe to their service, they will be able to deliver a quick FICO score, like based on your credit history. And that is pretty much how fast, I mean, that is pretty much the style that we follow based on the responses that you provide through those previous 5 sections that I talked about. And the score, obviously, just like FICO score, it ranges from 0 to 1000, and we give you a detailed set of results on why we scored between the 0 to 1000. It's a pretty extensive result, by the way. And we basically deliver this in 2 forms, right? The first form, which in my opinion is probably my favorite, is through the web browser, because here you can be fully anonymous. Because let's face it, most of the times when you're going through a survey, or when you're going through a detailed questionnaire, you will be asked to share your contact information. You will be asked to share your, the organization that you work for, your email address, your phone number. But if you just, with us, that's not the case. I mean, if you're going through our website, you can go through that entire set of questionnaire without sharing any of your contact details, and you can fully be anonymous. And we will deliver the results without getting any of your contact information. And if you're happy with the result, and if you want to talk to us more, then as a choice, we give you the choice, so that if you're interested, you can go through this in-depth consultation. And that is why our solution is so famous, because we deliver immediate results without the need of any contact details, or by staying anonymous. And we basically give the end user the choice whether to choose us for in-depth consultation. And this process is basically going through a lot of updates. I mean, we have come a long way, because during the beginning, if I'm not mistaken, we started with somewhere around 80 questions, but I believe now it's just come down to like 200 plus questions. So again, I'm not exactly sure about the number of questions that I've come up with, but the point that I'm trying to make here is this entire process is constantly being monitored and versioned, and we are basically keeping an eye on how these ransomware attacks are being evolved. And based on that, we are basically updating our entire R-score exercise based on current events, so that the entire questionnaire, the entire process is relevant to the current technologies, or to the current situation. So let me just give you a high-level overview of what our web-based version looks like. So as I mentioned before, it's a public service. We don't charge any. There is no financial charge involved. There's not. I mean, it's basically a free service provided to any and all of our customers. And as I pointed out before, it can be treated as a fully anonymous service. You don't have to share any of your contact details. This is the link. So all you would have to do is basically go to www.getarscore.com, and you basically go through a set of 23 questions that is basically split over the 5 categories. And as I pointed out before, this basically demonstrates true self-assessment to showcase the fact that you're fully prepared to recover when a ransomware attack happens. And it basically guides an organization to ensure that they're prepared for such an attack. And if they're not, it actually gives pretty good pointers of getting into a consultative version, right? And this is where the consultative version gets into picture, where we basically offer a full-fledged service to ensure that our customers are fully prepared. We basically deliver we actually start with even a more detailed questionnaire that has more than 98 questions per category. that actually dives deeper into exploring the security policies, exploring the backup and the recovery policies, exploring all of the entire backup infrastructure and the processes involved to ensure that your organization is prepared. And it's a highly detailed assessment, which basically gives not just a greater level of input, but we also give you an extremely detailed level of feedback on how you can actually improve your backup infrastructure to be prepared, and to basically not just recover, but also try to prevent your backup infrastructure from being impacted by a ransomware attack. And all of the feedback and all of the interaction is basically fully real time. That's the whole point of this consultative approach. And it's basically guided by certified partners or even we also have in-house HYCU experts who can help with this entire exercise. So I believe I've given a very high-level overview of what our score is and how we can help organizations to examine themselves to see how well they're prepared. So with that being said, I believe now it's a good time for us to get into the best practices of ransomware recovery. So we basically believe that the entire strategy of ransomware recovery, or the best practices that deal with ransomware recovery, basically has three major phases: prevention, detection, and recovery, right? So what does prevention really deal with? So we start with the whole premise of how a ransomware attack actually happens. And it's not magical, right? As I pointed out before, the weak link here is us. I mean, it could basically be a simple distraction, or not being aware of suspicious links or suspicious emails. And this could happen in several forms. It could be phishing, or accidentally clicking into malicious web pages, or it could be day one software vulnerabilities, right? I mean, as Mark pointed out, the number of attack vectors are basically increasing day by day, right? So how do you go about enforcing yourself or enforcing your backup infrastructure to ensure that even though your production environment gets impacted, your backup infrastructure is still safe? So these are the simple set of steps, right? Ensure that you have multi-factor authentication in place. Ensure that you don't have any default passwords. Go through the job of ensuring that you have a siloed network, a dedicated backup network, and also ensure that the backup traffic is fully encrypted so that there is no unauthorized, there's no unauthorized access of data when it's on the air. And also, in addition to that, ensure that you are using microsegmentation by using features like role-based access control or multi-tenancy to ensure that only the right set of users have access to the data or to applications that they're authorized to, right? So that even if a specific user gets impacted, only that specific, environment gets, impacted, and it doesn't basically spread on to other organizations or other departments, right? And as always, keep patching, because always ensure that you have the right set of security updates. I always, I keep an eye on my personal devices to ensure that I keep my iPhone, I keep my MacBook up to date. I can be a little bit OCD'd about it, but guess what? It always pays, right? So that's very important. And if I'm doing this in my personal life, goes without saying that doing it in our work life is even more important. And last but not the least, the usage of worm-enabled object storage. Because the one thing that I wanted to point out is backup immutability plays a huge role, because all the things that I talked about, multi-factor authentication, network segmentation, multi-tenancy, use role-based access control, patching, this all aids in air-gap backups. But air-gap backup, it's basically fortifying all of the defenses, but those walls can always be broken. And the only thing that's going to save you is true backup immutability. And backup immutability can only be achieved using worm-based object storage. And that's where Nutanix objects comes into picture, and also by using Nutanix snapshots. But I'd like to, have Mark talk more about this, because, I don't want to steal his thunder. Mark?
Yeah, I always call like worm-based storage, I call it the last line of defense against attacks. right? People can come in through the front door. They can mess with encryption and things like that. They'll try to get to your backups as well, right? But if you have backup target storage that is A, immutable, B, you can basically put a lock on it and people cannot delete those snapshots for a specified time, even if you have Uber admin credentials, right? You know that that backup from yesterday or from last week is good because nobody has been able to change it. Nobody has been able to encrypt it. They have not been able to basically put ransom on it, right? So last layer of defense, you know you have a good copy. But just like Shiva said, patch, 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 you also need to test, right? Because if you don't have your testing figured out, then you're going to be scrambled anyway. But yeah, worm-based storage, last layer of defense.
So, one of my favorite topics, especially when it comes to the worm-based compliance, is following these standards, especially the SEC 17A-14, or the FINRA Rule 4511, or the CFTC rule. Because one of the things that I wanted to point out is a lot of vendors basically use the term immutability, but they don't use the term worm, right? Because Mark has brought an important point, because a true immutability basically means that no one will be able to not just encrypt that backup, but also delete or corrupt that backup. Even a user with Uber administrative privileges won't be able to delete that. And that's exactly what Nutanix Objects delivers. And that's one of my favorite capabilities that Nutanix Objects offer. So I'd like to pass this to Mark with regards to prevention, because Mark has a lot of interesting content with regards to how we can detect and prevent any of these attacks. Mark, would you like to take this up?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so prevention is, of course, number one, right? Locking the front door is what we all do when we leave the house. But how do you actually detect when something is wrong in your environment, right? You can look at basic indicators like networking traffic, IO traffic, maybe look at file updates and so on, permission changes. There's some easy occurrences of things going not quite right in your environment, right? So you can look at it from a networking perspective, see if there is irregular networking traffic in terms of volume, in terms of direction. Microsegmentation definitely helps there as well, right? People try to go east-west in your networking. You can just prevent that. There are all kinds of security information and event management tools that you can apply. You can leverage anomaly detection in your environment. And I have a slide coming up in just a second, how we do that from a Nutanix perspective. And then, of course, solutions like HYCU, they have some level of introspection built in as well. If your typical backup is, say, 50 gigs a day, but all of a sudden that balloons to 250, 500, maybe even a terabyte a day, you know something is very rapidly changing in your environment. So that should basically ring some alarm bells, and that should cause your team, your team to do the inspection and see if there's actually something that is causing that you're not expecting that. So multiple layers of defense, multiple layers of detection as well. Next slide, please. We've taken this very much to heart at Nutanix. We recently introduced a new set of functionality that we call Data Lens. And that does exactly what I was just talking about, giving you all of those tools and all of those techniques basically to help you detect whether something is wrong in your environment, right? So insights into capacity trending, is it going up really quickly? Who is accessing your data? Are there unexpected locations that are accessing my data? And we basically give you policy-based rules that help you flag those events. Of course, we're making use of AI ML as well, right? There's definitely things that we can learn just by looking at patterns, just by looking at how people access their data, whether they're changing data and things like that. So it's fairly easy to flag those and basically say, hey, there's something fishy going on over there as well. Audit trails, another piece of the functionality over here. at some point in time, if something went wrong, you need to go back and actually find out what went wrong, where they went in, so you can actually plug that hole, right? So having a list of who did what, right? The whodunits of actions in the past help you find that way, help you see which door was left open. Ransomware protection, we're also using AI, ML, and various access patterns to flag known behavior by the various tools out there, right? If we see hundreds of files all of a sudden change their extension, there might be something going on, right? If we see encryption traffic at the storage layer, we know that there's something going on. So a lot of signatures that we're applying basically that says, oh, this is this attack, this might be this attack. Let's have a look at that. And then, of course, data agent and analytics. It's something that is not as appropriate for ransomware, but very much a powerful set of functionality within Data Lens as well. And then basically you need to start thinking how do I recover from an attack as well, right? Within Nutanix, I said, yes, we are testing our personnel, but the other thing that Nutanix IT last year did, I talked to our CIO recently, is they actually did a pen test of how to recover from a ransomware protection within Nutanix. And that typically brings a whole bunch of questions like, who's actually responsible for this data? Who is actually responsible for making the decision of how we're going to roll back and when we are going to roll back to a certain thing? So definitely would recommend going through those pen tests so you understand within your organization who makes the decision, who has the roles and responsibilities, but also how am I doing this? Which actions do I need to take to recover from it? Nutanix helps with that, right? We have various layers within our technology, within our product offerings that help you recover relatively quickly from a production down environment, right? Snapshotting is, of course, a very obvious thing. If you have a daily snapshot or an hourly snapshot or a weekly snapshot, you can very quickly recover from that known good point in time and basically continue from there. We have replication built in, so you could have replication to multiple locations, and with air gapping and various different administration domains, make it really hard for people once they're in one data center to go to a different data center, right? Just basically separating out those responsibilities. And once again, 3-2-1 rule, right? 3 copies, 2 medias, 1 offsite. I'm sure, Shiva, you talk about that all day long, right? The 3-2-1 rule. Maybe you want to add to that.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. So, look, especially when it comes to HYCU and Nutanix, it's peanut butter and jelly. The reason why I say that is because when it comes to this whole 3-2-1 backup rule, we can leverage Nutanix's storage level snapshots. And the way we integrate with the snapshotting is very interesting because we invoke these snapshots through the Nutanix's REST APIs. And these snapshots are totally invisible to the end user, right? So even users with malicious intent or any malware or ransomware attack won't be able to touch these snapshots and delete them because they're totally hidden from the end users and it's only accessible by HYCU. Case in point, we have helped a couple of customers because they actually had set the retention time for Nutanix snapshots through the HYCU's policy. This customer basically had all of their production environment encrypted because, it was all Windows environment. And sadly, even their backups were encrypted because they were basically being stored on unsecured SMB shares. And guess what saved them? It was the Nutanix snapshots, and those snapshots were basically preserved by the HYCU's data protection policies, which was basically being used for recovery. So this customer didn't even have to pay a penny to recover from a ransomware attack. So think about this. You have snapshots, and with HYCU, you can actually do backups directly to worm-enabled object storage, meaning that you also have your backups fully, a ransomware proof from any of these encryption or any of these malware or even a malicious intent in order to delete these backups because they're already on worm-enabled backup storage. And as Mark pointed out, testing, HYCU does have a solid backup validation capabilities because at the end of the day, let's face it, A backup is only as good if you're able to do a restore, and you shouldn't be at a place where where when you try to restore a backup, and if that backup is unrestorable or if it's already infected, then that's not the point, right? So we do have detailed inbuilt backup validation policies that can actually help you to ensure that the backups that you've taken are in fact recoverable. So
I want to add one thing, Shiva, and I was just thinking about it. You made a comment earlier on around sometimes having to lock down in your environment for investigation, how things happened, and so on. Right, your production basically is locked down while the investigation is going on.
yes, so
especially right now with the supply chain issues and so on, and having in some cases 6 months lead time for getting replacement hardware or getting extra hardware in your data centers. We actually have we introduced a new solution at Nutanix relatively recently that can help here. Just so shameless plug. Nutanix clusters on AWS, NC2 on AWS. You can basically rent hardware from AWS, and now you can install Nutanix on that hardware. Fully supported environments that we launched together with AWS. Now you can spin that up in just a couple of hours. Within maybe 6 or 8 hours, you have a full-blown Nutanix environment running in the cloud, and you can use that and HYCU, of course, to recover your workloads on that environment while the on-prem investigation is going on. Thought I would throw that in because I think that's a very important part that we recently basically jointly developed over there, Shiva.
No, fully agree, Marks. Sorry, I missed out on that. The thing is, since HYCU has this ability to perform backups to Nutanix objects, which could also be tiered to AWS S3, here's how it works. If your primary environment is encrypted, you can always bring up your Nutanix cluster on your AWS environment. And since your backups already reside on an S3 target, all you would have to do is simply deploy a HYCU controller on your Nutanix cluster and simply import that backup, the S3 bucket, onto your HYCU and just start restoring those VMs, and that's it. We actually have a live demo on that. Maybe as a call to action, we should be sharing that demo link, which talks exactly about the use case that you mentioned. So we're pretty much done with our session. So just wanted to go with the call to action. So please download our survey report, especially when it comes to the whole state of ransomware preparedness. You can scan this QR code that would take us to your website. Or you can also contact us, be it with regards to Nutanix or at HYCU, and we'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions. So before we conclude the session, I just wanted to know if there are any questions from our audience. David, any questions?
Absolutely. Yeah, we got a lot of great questions rolling in. This has been a really great session. I've learned a lot. I know the audience has as well. So many actionable ways and best practices to be better protected and be better prepared for ransomware. Let's see. First question here I see that came in. This one is for you, Mark, at Nutanix. They say they'd like to learn more about the Nutanix anti-ransomware technologies. What do you recommend? Where can they go?
Yeah, so great question. We definitely touched on a lot of data points within the session. I think the most important resource, we have an excellent white paper out on our website that talks about all of the different layers that Nutanix brings to the table in terms of ransomware prevention, detection, and then recovery. If you just Google for Nutanix and ransomware, it's the first link. So definitely would recommend going there, David.
Excellent. All right. Let's see. Here's another good question for you, Shiva, at HYCU. They want to know, are all backups immutable by default? And how does Worm play a role in backup immutability?
Yeah. So this is one of the most frequently asked questions, right? Because a lot of people assume that when a backup file is uneditable because it's on a proprietary format and it could basically be accessed only by that software. And if that software has a retention policy or a lock in place, that backup is automatically mutable. But that's actually not the case, right? Immutability goes even beyond that. Immutability basically means that it's not just about, messing around with the integrity of backup. It's also about ensuring that even any user with a malicious intent, even a super administrator, shouldn't be able to delete that backup once it's taken, right? If that backup has a set expiration time, that backup should exist until its expiration time is met. And no one should be able to, edit or corrupt or delete that backup. And that's what immutability truly means. And Worm is the means to that immutability. Worm is the only way where you can truly achieve backup immutability. So I wouldn't say they're like totally different. They're basically related to each other. And as I pointed out before, immutability is the end result, and Worm is the means to that end result.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that, because I know immutability is being thrown around as a buzzword a lot these days, and can get really confusing as to exactly what it means when it's used. So here's another good question. This one about Worm. Mark, they want to know, can Worm be disabled on backups on Nutanix objects?
Yeah, it's a good question. It comes up very, very often. The short answer is no, it cannot be disabled. Right. At the moment you enable Worm on a bucket or on an object specifically, we enforce for the duration of that lock. Basically, we enforce the cannot delete, cannot modify. Even if you have super admin privileges, you cannot change it. The time has to run out before we actually unlock that. And of course, you can always increase it, right? Say you need to have that legal hold that we were talking about earlier. You can increase it. You cannot decrease it. You cannot remove it. So very, very secure there, David.
As a matter of fact, Mark, if I remember right, I mean, Nutanix basically gives you an explicit warning when you lock, right? By saying that, hey, are you really sure about enabling the lock? Because once the lock is enabled, we cannot remove it. That's how serious the Worm lock is, right, Mark?
It is, and we do that for a good reason, right?
Yeah.
Because from a capacity perspective, sometimes we do see people surprised, right? Having Worm there means I cannot delete it, means I cannot clean up my storage, right? So it does have impact on your sizing. We fully realize that, but I think buying a little bit extra storage is probably a lot cheaper than actually paying the ransom in the end. It's a cheap insurance.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's perfect for ransomware recovery there. Another question for you, Mark. Where does Nutanix Mine fit in with ransomware protection of HYCU and Nutanix?
Yeah, it really is. It's almost the easy button of getting to a fully tested, fully guaranteed solution. Mine basically is, for the people that don't know it, is something that we developed together with HYCU. It's a combination of a Nutanix platform that is optimized for storing backup storage. It is the objects storage layer that basically provides you the Worm, and then we have HYCU bundled in as well that is very easy to deploy, very easy to configure. So basically, from the time you plug in the Mine appliance from a power and networking perspective, within an hour, in some cases even shorter than an hour, you are up and running. You have a fully functional backup environment that you can back up anything to, not just Nutanix, but anything, with having the full security in mind of Worm, of having those backups completely locked down, even if something goes wrong on your production hardware. So very easy way of buying, deploying, and managing solution.
Excellent. Shiva, this question, they want to know, they say, well, we realize the security benefits of performing backups to objects. How does the backup performance look like of object storage?
I'll be honest. Actually, that's an excellent question. The reason why I say that is because this is something that I used to wonder personally myself. Because let's face it, when object storage was introduced back in the day, it was basically meant to be this cheap and deep storage meant for unstructured data, like storing photos or files and folders that's fully irrelevant irrelevant to the criticality of a business. But that's not the case anymore. Object storage has come to a place where it's not just being secure, but it's also being efficient in terms of performance and also in terms of cost. So when it comes to HYCU and Nutanix, HYCU basically has done a lot of R&D to ensure that our backups are highly efficient. Our backup writes are extremely efficient when we do backups directly to object storage. Now, by default, HYCU is a storage agnostic solution, but we highly recommend our customers to do backups to object storage because of our optimized backup performance on object storage. And in addition to that, Nutanix Objects is known for high performance. You basically have the ability to define your own storage tiers within your Nutanix Objects clusters. And the combination of a highly efficient solution as HYCU and high performance solution like Nutanix Objects, when you combine them together, performance is not even going to be a question because that's basically delivered by default. So absolutely no, you don't have to worry about performance, especially when it comes to HYCU and Nutanix Objects.
Yeah, we've done quite a bit of testing, performance testing, right? But in the end, if you use Nutanix Objects, it leverages all of the power that we've built into AOS, into our NCI platform. With backup traffic, we're typically within 95 to 98% of native storage speed, right? So yes, there's a little performance overhead, but you get indexability and all that kind of stuff, right? So very high performance, and backups are just going to fly.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have here in our live session for questions. We, of course, will get back to anyone out there that we didn't get time to respond to on the live event. We really appreciate all the excellent questions, and I learned so much on the event today. Thank you so much, Sheva and Mark. Appreciate your insight.
Thanks for having us.
And of course, thank you to our friends at HYCU and Nutanix for supporting today's event. For more information, check out the QR code that's right there in your audience console, as well as the handouts tab for additional information. And with that, it's now my pleasure to announce the winner of today's Visa $300 gift card. This is going to David Kuffner from Illinois. Congratulations, David Kuffner from Illinois. We'll be reaching out to you and also to our Best Question prize winner today. Thank you to everyone who joined us. We'll see you next time, and have a great day.